Welcome to Small Medium at Large, the podcast where we dive deep into life's biggest questions with a little help from Spirit. I'm Rebecca Rosen, spiritual medium and best-selling author, and I'm here to share insights, tools, and wisdom to help you connect with your team spirit, align with your higher self, and live with more clarity, peace, and purpose. This season, we're exploring what it really means to practice self-care and self-love, and why these aren't luxuries, but spiritual essentials. We'll talk about how caring for yourself creates space for divine connection, to source, to self, and to others, accelerates your spiritual growth, and helps you navigate the challenges of this world with more grace and ease. Through heartfelt conversations, spirit-led guidance, and powerful guest interviews, my hope is to inspire you to fill your cup, shine your light, and create a little more heaven on earth. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and let's begin. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to dive into episode 1, Soul Maintenance, Daily Self-Care to Stay Aligned with Source. And so in this episode, I was guided to share with you tools from my book, What's Your Heaven, that I use every single day. You know, from morning prayer to a gratitude practice to intuitive journaling. And some sacred self-care rituals that will help you manage your energy and practice self-care. And so I wanted to start this episode by sharing with you ultimately what inspired this entire podcast season. And it was a few months back where I was feeling really out of balance on every level. I was over-functioning and I was neglecting my own self-care on every level. And it caught up with me. And one day, I was just exhausted. I was definitely under the weather. I prayed, and I was, quite honestly, I was very emotional. And anytime I hit that breaking point and I end up having a heart-to-heart with God and my guides, usually that's when they respond. And respond in really big ways. And so this one day, I had said to my guides, time out, I'm done, I'm tired. I love what I get to do, but I'm running so much energy through me and it's really out of balance. I need to fill up my gas tank, so to speak. So help me. I need time alone. I need time away. I need time to completely unplug. Okay, so that was in the morning. Fast forward a couple of hours later, I got a text from one of my dear clients who happens to be a friend as well. And she reached out and she said she was feeling me, checking in on me, wondered what was going on. And when I responded back, I told her how intuitive she was and that I was at this breaking point. And then her response was she sent me a link to the Canyon Ranch, and she suggested I look into this. It was a week-long, wellness retreat, so to speak. And she suggested, and she said her guides were saying that I needed to go. And this was 2 weeks from that day. Now, anyone who knows me, I'm very scheduled and I'm very, I don't know, it's hard for me to do anything spontaneous because I have so many moving parts that I'm juggling. So for me to drop everything and carve out that time for what felt like at that moment selfish time away from everyone and everything, but what I've come to realize it was the most selfless and loving thing I could have done. That's not typical for me. And so when I went to look at my schedule, I had most of the week open. And my team had scheduled just a couple of things, but not much. And that's when I realized, all right, this is a gift from God, and I am going to honor this invitation. Things come to me as invitations from the universe. And I saw that client as my earth angel messenger saying, Spirit is saying, go take care of you, go fill up your gas tank, go recharge and reconnect. And I did it. And when I was there, it was honestly, I don't remember since I've had kids. I mean, quite honestly, in at least 20 or more years, I have not gone away by myself for 7 full days with a complete digital detox, unplugging from everyone and everything, including my kids and my husband, and truly just coming home to me. And when I was able to make the time and space to get out of all the doing and being busy and in those roles of, the functions and responsibilities that one typically does on a daily basis, that's when I was able to get out of my head, get back into my heart, find head and heart coherence, and then from that place, be inspired. Spending hours of time alone in nature. Nature for me is how I plug back into source, because nature naturally vibrates at the frequency of love. And so we naturally entrain to that higher frequency. And so I had all this creative time, and I was able to then easily download in my meditations and just through divine inspiration, a lot of aha moments. And that's when Spirit said, now take this lesson and this experience and pay it forward in service to others and share the importance of self-care on a mind, body, spirit level. And it's going to look different for everyone. Not everyone needs to unplug for 7 days and be alone. That's how I am wired. Okay. And you have to figure out what you need, what works for you, and what self-care really means for you. So having said all that, here we are. Everything I'm about to share with you has been from my own personal experience. And as I always like to remind you, take what resonates, take what works for you, leave the rest. And here we go. And so I wanted to start with what my guides keep reminding me of, and that we are in a collective transformation from this 3D kind of old earth way of being, moving into the 5D consciousness and energies on the planet now. And so with that, we see a collapse of old structures that were built on deception, manipulation, and ego. And we're transitioning to a new world based on sovereignty and truth and loyalty and love and integrity and authenticity. And so there are literally energetic waves that are coming on the planet. And I know a lot of you listening are feeling it. That's probably why you're tuning in. And these waves have the potential to awaken millions, okay? And with that awakening, it's triggering a lot of our shadow, the dark nights of the soul for many of us that we will be experiencing if we haven't already. And that's when we start to go through kind of the ego death, which I'm going to save that for another episode. We'll do a deep dive on all of that. But I want to now talk about the role of lightworkers and starseeds, okay? This is for any of you who feel like you are here for a greater cause. You are here because you are brave, that because you are more awakened already. You were born knowing. You're either just waking up to that, or you've been aware and you are now fully inspired to show up and to be of service to others, to be the light. And so if that resonates, what I would say is it's really important to anchor ourselves during these changing times, especially if you're wired to be more highly empathic, highly sensitive, okay? Because naturally you're going to feel the upheaval and all of the changes and all the chaos, okay? This is where my guides keep showing me, be the eye of the storm, cool, calm, collected, grounded, okay? In your knowing, in your light. Because we can't control what's external, right? All the chaos swirling around, but we can choose how we wish to show up and how we choose to respond versus react. And so it's really important that we find ways to ground, to anchor, and attune to the light and that divinity that's within us, That's the spark of God that we all are, right? That's our soul. And I talk a lot about that in my books, but especially I talk about it in What's Your Heaven, but I talk about it really in Awaken the Spirit Within You. If you haven't read that, that's my masterclass book. And that's who are we really? And that is we are a spark of the divine. And so we are here in a physical vessel, right? To be that light. And so it's really important that we stay grounded, that we stay connected to the earth, and that we align with the higher frequencies. It's really important that we avoid getting caught up in all the chaotic energies and instead ride the waves with grace. And so shining our light is critical, okay? Because we serve as a beacon for those lost in darkness. And I really want to encourage you to step up, to be seen, to share your messages, to support others. I know I work with a lot of clients who have all of these gifts, unique gifts for their soul contract, their purpose, but that they're not feeling safe to be seen or heard, or they're having imposter syndrome because they don't feel worthy, or they have no on a mind level credibility or business sharing their truth, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Again, if you are listening to this right now, there is a really great chance that you are one of these light workers or starseeds here to bring more awareness, bring more light, but it starts with yourself. You can't give what you don't have. And so that is why I'm creating this series, right? Connection to source, connection to self, and then connection to others. And this follows what I outlined in my book, What's Your Heaven? I have those three parts broken down. And so here we are in connection to source, okay? So reminding us that God, whatever you want to call God, universe, divine spirit, supreme being, the creator, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's all the same thing. It's love. It's an energy of unconditional, pure love. Okay. And God is our source of all things. And so I like to think of it like, I'm sure many of you heard the ocean analogy, that we are all just a drop in this giant ocean. And that means we're all connected. So when you incarnate into your body or vessel, imagine a cup, and you're taking that cup and you're filling up with that ocean water, right? And then when we transition or when we pass away, then that cup of water returns back to the ocean where we're reunited. But within that single drop is the entire ocean. Okay, so within us, we have that source of oneness, which we call the I am presence. And that, again, relates back to source or God. So let's talk about now how to recognize when you feel disconnected. Okay, here are some signs that Spirit has shared with me. First of all, we need to look to our emotions. Okay, our feelings are our indication and guidance of if we're in or out of alignment with our higher selves. Okay, like Abraham Hicks likes to say, if you're in or out of your vortex. And so that really is that space of being in the flow. Okay, you're in alignment with your higher self, with your team in spirit. That is when miracles happen effortlessly, naturally, and consistently. And so it's, on a daily basis, we're going to go through a range of emotions. In my book, What's Your Heaven? I put in the David Hawkins scale of consciousness, the levels of consciousness. And that's a really great thing to refer back to, because he talks about how we calibrate at different frequencies, and we can look to our emotions to figure out where we are on that scale of consciousness. And so the bottom being the lowest, which is victimhood and shame and grief. Okay, think of that as the very lowest. And then at the highest, you're in a place of unity, oneness, harmony, love, joy, okay, peace, gratitude. These are the highest expressions. Okay, and so when we are hanging out in these lower frequencies on a continual basis, we're not in our vortex. And that is not the frequency of miracles or flow. So there's, in fact, so if you're disconnected, you're going to notice a lack of flow. Everything feels like effort, struggle, pain, suffering. That is when you're disconnected. Another sign is cognitive dissonance. This is a state of confusion. You're walking around super unclear, super foggy. Another state would be fragmentation. This comes up a lot in readings. So this is when our energy is scattered. Again, lack of clarity. And this means we're ungrounded. It means we have left parts of ourselves with others or other spaces. So in the past, sometimes in the future, when we're constantly future tripping. So past or future creates this state of fragmentation in the present, okay? That is a sign you are disconnected. Another sign would be when we feel a dysregulated nervous system. When we constantly feel on edge, we're constantly in the state of fight, flight, or freeze, right? In that chronic state of stress. And, when we notice we're not breathing, I know so often I'll notice like, gosh, I'm just shallow breathing. I just need to stop and connect to my breath. Because when you connect to your breath, you connect to your body and then you're present. So a dysregulated nervous system. Another sign is when we're short-tempered, when we notice little things trigger us or activate us. And when we feel reactive, when we feel quick to judge, okay? These are all signs. And so another sign that we are disconnected is binary thinking. This is when we're constantly in judgment. Okay, so we're labeling things or judging things as good or bad, right or wrong, negative or positive. This is a really important point to, listen to your words, listen to your thoughts, but listen to your words. Okay, just pay attention. Our words are our first indication when we are coming from ego, our lower selves, and that place of judgment rather than discernment, which comes from the higher self. So binary thinking. Okay, so another sign you're disconnected. Constant chaos and drama swirling around you or within you. So when you notice on a frequent, like a daily basis, there's constant dramas, okay? You're always trying to put out a fire, or you're getting dragged into somebody else's chaos and drama. That is a sign you are disconnected because quite honestly, we attract what we are. So we become a vibrational match to drama and chaos. And so if we notice it showing up left and right in our lives, we can't blame the situation or the person bringing it. We have to look to ourselves, go within and say, okay, what part of me is vibrating at that frequency and therefore attracting it into my experience. Another sign would be rigidity. This I unfortunately have learned a lot about and in the last couple of years. And it's recognizing when we are constantly trying to control the situations, the people around us. This is what I've been working on with my codependency, my what I call high functioning codependency characteristics, termed by this fabulous therapist. She's written a few books on this, Terry Cole. And Boundary Boss and Too Much. These are her awesome books that talk about high functioning codependency tendencies. And this is about overt or covert control. Okay, so we are totally disconnected when we are trying to control others or control situations. All we can control is ourselves, our choices, and how we choose to show up each day. Okay, so having said all that, these are signs to notice when you're disconnected. And we will go into, throughout this podcast series, ways to reconnect to your highest light and reconnect to source, okay, so that you can feel this alignment and be in a state of grace. Let's start with gratitude. So based on my book, What's Your Heaven? Okay. I offer in that book, a lot of tools for daily self-care and practices that help support your spiritual alignment, your emotional well-being, and your vibrational coherence. Okay? Now, gratitude. This is honestly one of the most important things when you're trying to shift from a low vibration to a high vibration. Because gratitude on the Hawkins scale, it falls right up at the top in the 5D heavenly frequencies of love, compassion, joy. Okay, it is one of the highest frequencies and fastest ways to shift your own frequency. And so the moment you drop into your heart and you feel gratitude, you will feel a shift. Okay, you move into a loving space and you move into a version of yourself that is your true soul self. And that's your connection back to the divine, back to what I was referring to as that divine spark within you. That is the God or goddess energy that you are. So gratitude creates coherence in our energy field. Okay, so I know you've heard a lot about head-heart coherence and the importance of that. And so when our thoughts and our thinking field and our heart-centered presence are aligned, we then expand. And it determines what is attracted to us. And so this is all about the law of attraction, right? And that determines what comes into our life experience. So being in this state naturally deepens our sense of being one with Source, okay? And reminding us that we are connected to everyone and everything, which puts us naturally in 5D unity consciousness. That's where we feel connected and we don't feel disconnected and separate and alone. So when life feels like a struggle, okay? When you feel like you're efforting your way through, simply setting the intention to shift out of that pain and suffering and struggle and into a state of grace, ease, joy, and flow, setting the intention to get out of your head and drop into your heart, and then breathing into that heart center and focusing on the things that you are naturally grateful for. Well, this is how we move out of our living hell and into our heaven on earth. Okay? Energy follows intention. So where our attention goes, energy flows. And gratitude helps us regulate our nervous system and our HRV and heart rate variability, and it lowers our cortisol. Okay? So it gets us out of the fight or flight or freeze state. It gets us out of chronic stress. Gratitude allows us to be present and it boosts our healing. It puts us in a state of expansion versus contraction, which is where healing happens. I can't tell you how many times Spirit has said, if you're in an expanded state, your body will naturally be in a state of wellness. Or if you're experiencing a health issue, you will heal faster. Or if you're, going into a surgery or a procedure of some sort, if you're in a state of expansion and love and peace versus contraction or fear, the procedure goes well. The healing after the fact is sped up. Okay. So we want to get in our body and really feel and integrate this frequency of gratitude rather than just mentally thinking thoughts of gratitude. Okay. You got to feel it deeply. So you might have to, when you're sitting in a daily practice, you might have to really sit there for a while if you're constantly in your head and you're just mentally, reciting the thoughts, but not fully feeling it in your heart. But it is a daily practice and it's a gateway or doorway that draws us into another reality or dimension. So this is what I mean that we move from 3D to 5D. And it's a way into the love realm, okay? Love and light. And so this is how we shift our reality. As co-creators, we have an active role. And we need to dial into a frequency that serves our soul's evolution. And so that takes, intention and practice. Spirit always knows what we need. And sometimes that guidance comes through a podcast episode or a quiet moment in your inbox. If you'd like to receive weekly messages from me with reflections, tools, and spiritual insights, I'd love for you to join my newsletter. You can sign up at RebeccaRosen.com. Okay, so gratitude keeps us from being caught up in the entanglements, the traumas and dramas that we experience around us, and it really does allow us to break out of the programs and the agreements that we made. And a lot of times these are passed down from our ancestral line, okay? Or it's childhood conditioning. So this goes back to the soul contracts that we were born into, the soul contract we signed up for. Some of these soul contracts include lack and scarcity, judgment and limitation. And so, it's part of that soul contract experience. If you can reframe it from it's happening to us to it's happening for us, right? Trusting that this contrast is how we learn. Most often as humans, we need to learn from what we don't want to really fully know and appreciate what we do want. That's called learning through opposites. And that's how most of us learn our lessons. And so when these entanglements, traumas, and dramas show up, we can bless it. As my guides say, bless the mess, right? We say, okay, what is the gift in this? So we see the silver lining. We see the gift. By knowing what we don't want, we become super crystal clear on what we do want. And then we shift the focus to what we desire, what we want to create more of. And we stop giving focus, energy, and attention to all the pain, struggle, and suffering. Okay, so I want to share with you a morning practice, midday practice, evening practice that I have been using for years, but especially in the last year, I've really returned back to all of this that has really seemed to work for me, inspired by my guides that I really picked. I kind of cherry picked the ones that I felt like were most resonant, that seemed to come up a lot in working with clients. So for a morning practice, really, it starts with daily intentions. So I start my day by setting a clear heart-centered intention. And I wake up in the morning and I say, how do I want to feel today? Okay. And I really just check in with myself. Where am I? What am I feeling? And how do I want to feel? What do I choose? And then I affirm. I ask for a day of heaven on earth, a day full of grace, ease, joy, and flow. I choose, and then I fill in the blank. I choose peace. I choose love. I choose presence, whatever that is for you. And then I move into my gratitude practice. And so I usually journal. Writing for me seems to really help me integrate it. But I write down 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for right upon awakening. And this raises my frequency and it tunes me into the energy of abundance consciousness. Okay? I acknowledge the things that in this moment I am grateful for from an authentic, heart-centered level, not a mind level. Okay? The third thing I do is I just focus on my breath. I breathe. I told you earlier, there's so many times when I'm in the self-preservation, fight, flight, or freeze, I notice I stop breathing. And our breath is what helps us be present and centered. And so I connect with my breath with the intention of being present in my body. I breathe, literally imagining dropping out of my head into my heart. Sometimes I put my hand over my heart to pull the energy there. And then I get into that gratitude in my heart to shift my frequency. And then the fourth thing I do is I connect with my team spirit. So I do this through really short, instructional prayer. Okay, so I invite my team in and I do it in an affirmative way. I say, thank you, team spirit, for being present with me now. Okay, connect me, protect me, guide and direct me throughout this day. So something to that effect. I invite them to protect me through the day, to walk beside me, to walk in front of me, to guide me from my higher self. Really asking for them to be present in co-creating my day, my heaven on earth. And then I sometimes will just say, what do I most need to know today? Okay. And then I listen. That's where I meditate. I just sit in stillness. I see what comes to me, sometimes a lot, sometimes nothing. And that's okay too, because I know what I'm doing is I'm attuning my frequency to match miracle consciousness. Okay. And that's where I open to receive the miracles, the synchronicities, the signs, the intuitive downloads or hits throughout my day. And then I go about my day. For my midday practice, this is really a reset. So this is about energy grounding for me. This is, when I recognize I'm feeling fragmented, scattered, overwhelmed, stressed, this is where literally if I just get out in nature, depends on the time of the year, but for the most part, I can get out into nature. If it's 5 minutes a day, that's fine. I would love for it to be longer, but sometimes that's all we have. But really just take a walk to get outside, to breathe deeply, putting your feet, if you can get your bare feet on the earth, that's called earthing or grounding. And then sometimes I'll just imagine draining energy out of my feet, releasing it from my body, connecting into the heartbeat of Mother Earth, the Schumann resonance. Sometimes I imagine putting roots down into the earth like a tree. And that leads me to nature. I mentioned it earlier, but nature vibrates at the frequency of love. So just being in nature alone, you soak up all the negative ions, and that alone can help you shift out of fear-based emotions and back into love. And so I have this really great story where about a week ago, I was filming another podcast, and this guy I had filmed it with, it was he and I and my brother B. I was filming B's podcast, and Dave and I were riding the elevator down after, and he asked me, he said, you absorb a lot of energy, and what do you do to stay clear? And I said, and it was he and I on the elevator, and there's another woman there. I said, my number one thing is nature, to ground and to get into all the negative ions. And then this woman chimes in. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this. She goes, that's my company. She explained she's a therapist who created a company that offers therapeutic experiences in nature to heal and manage energy. So I saw that as a wink from the divine and just validating the truth behind the power of nature. And okay, and so another thing, midday reset, would be check in with your energy. Just pause during your day and just say, if you're noticing you're feeling some overwhelming emotion, just say, is this emotion or energy mine? Because so often, if you're sensitive, if you're intuitive, if you're an empath, it's usually not. And so if it's not, call your energy back and visualize returning whatever that emotion is or that energy is, return it to the sender with love. So often if you ask, if it's not mine, whose is it? Someone will flash in your mind. Maybe it's someone you were just talking to, or you were just physically with, or a situation or environment you were just in. Okay. So as empaths, we can be energetic sponges, and we're constantly picking up the thought forms of others around us. And so often what we are feeling or thinking isn't even our own. Okay. So I want you to imagine, because I know this has happened to me, you go to a dinner party, okay, or you go to a giant party, and in the energy of the people you're around, you're observing a lot of externally, beautiful people socializing who appear to be confident, happy, self-assured, and well put together, right? But you're in that experience and you start feeling or thinking thoughts that are completely opposite from how you generally feel or think. So you might start feeling insecure, or you're hearing thoughts that you aren't good enough, you aren't thin enough, pretty enough, smart enough, wealthy enough, okay? And so if there's a lot of people in that space at that party having these similar low frequency thoughts, what it does, it's creating a collective consciousness in the room. And so if you're highly sensitive or intuitive, what happens is we end up plugging into it unconsciously. Okay, so it's really easy to mistake it as our own. So pay attention. As the mantra, my mantra lately has been observe, don't absorb. Easier said than done. But when we notice this happening, just simply say, when those thoughts or feelings come to you out of the blue that are contrary to what you choose, just say, no, thank you. That's not mine. I don't agree with it. Okay, in evening practice, what I like to do at the end of my day is just do a forgiveness inventory. And this is really briefly reviewing your day and offering forgiveness to yourself or to others for anything that felt off, any place or any time you went into judgment, okay, and at any point you went into overt or covert control. Just ask for forgiveness and just release what no longer serves you. Okay, so another thing I like to do as I'm, before I'm going to bed is I invite in my team spirit to work on me while I'm sleeping. So I may ask for them to clear me, to heal me, whether it's of something emotionally I've been carrying that's not mine to carry, or it's maybe a health imbalance I've been experiencing. And simply just invite them into your sleep state. You can specify which guides or angels, or you can just leave it open to your general, higher beings of light, your team in spirit, Archangel Raphael, the healing angel, Archangel Michael, to cut cords of fear to anyone or anything that may be draining you or harming you on any level. And then a final thing I like to do in the evening is I keep a small journal and I like to write down the signs I got that day. So I may acknowledge a license plate I saw, or a song on the radio that came on. This happened yesterday where I went on a hike and I asked for signs, and it was my husband who found a rusty nail, which is my dad. Nails were one of his signs. And then a few hours later, I was driving, and then How to Save a Life by The Fray, that's my number one song with my dad, came on the radio. And then 3 times in one day, twice on television, and then one other time somebody said it, this too shall pass, which was a saying my dad always said. So in my journal that night, I wrote down the signs, because when I have deep, authentic gratitude for the signs and sincere excitement, it creates a momentum and energy. And what I've noticed is my guides and my loved ones in spirit give me more signs the more I pay attention, acknowledge, and appreciate them. Okay? So weekly self-care tools, a few things that my guides have shared with me, I just wanted to leave you with. Decluttering your energy field, okay? This is really important because we attract not what we want, but what we are, right? So where we're vibrating, what our frequency is. And what I have used and I've shared with you, I shared it in What's Your Heaven. I have a whole digital content course on this, but it's my CRT program, Change It, Run It, Tap It. This is about the piece in that program of running your energy with color, okay? Color for me really resonates. Sometimes I just close my eyes and visualize certain colors to clear my field. For example, deprogramming blue, royal blue. Run it through my entire body, all my chakras, every level and layer of my being. That's like taking a psychic shower, okay? It gets me cleansed and cleared and back to a state of neutral. And then from there, you can run other energies to fill up and expand. So check out What's Your Heaven if you want more information, or my Change It, Run It, Tap It program. But the importance of clearing your energy field, but also you could use sage, burn sage, or Palo Santo to clear your aura. You can use sound healing. I love to use my crystal sound healing bowls, tuning forks. That really does wonders for clearing the field and pretty quickly. You can use crystals. There's all sorts of ways to do it, but bottom line, you're releasing stagnant or negative energy, okay? And so the importance of doing this is because you want to stay as high vibrating, light and bright as possible so that you can flow through your life with ease and grace, so you can attract things that mirror back that same frequency of love and light and truth and peace and harmony. Another thing, weekly, daily self-care tools, really important, I think, is really limiting your exposure to kind of the media, to maybe social media, or even just like the news. I know it's important to stay informed, but it can really be fear-based, and it can really drain our energy. And so I'm not saying like don't ever, tune into it, but what I like to do before I turn on, if I want to watch the news, I just ground myself, hook up to source, ask to see through the lens of love, through divine eyes, to be informed, to take in what I need, but release the rest. And I put a giant gold bubble around me. So do what feels right. But the same with social media, okay? To really just see through all the illusion and cut straight to the truth, and anything and only anything, that vibrates in love and authenticity. And then finally, I think a really important practice, weekly, if not daily, is asking yourself, is this mine to carry? Is this mine to carry? Because so often we end up holding everyone and everything. It goes back to absorbing energy and people and situations when it's not ours to do. It's not ours to carry. And so that's a tool for discerning codependent patterns and staying in your own energetic lane. So the way I'd like to leave you with this episode is, don't dim your light, my friends. Okay? In fact, the opposite. Embrace your light. Be the light. Okay? Recognize your role as a guide. Find ways to, after you've really embodied and integrated your own light, to support those struggling around you, maybe with a kind word, with your presence, with an act of generosity. This is a time of giving and sharing and spreading love, okay? And as light workers and starseeds and highly sensitives, we are needed right now on the planet, now more than ever, to anchor the new energy. And so it's really important that we create the time and the space for ourselves first, so that we can show up in all these ways that we discussed. There you go. Thank you for joining me. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Until then, I am wishing you brightest blessings and all love. Thank you for listening to Small Medium at Large. If this episode inspired you, please follow the show and leave a review. It truly helps us reach more people who need these messages. For more resources and upcoming events, visit RebeccaRosen.com and connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Medium Rebecca Rosen.